And welcome to another video about the Roland V Synth. This time I'm going to be looking into how to navigate and select your patches using this window here, and the various different methods of patch selection. Now, before I go on, I want to mention something else which is important. VSynth is equipped with another feature called the patch palette. Here is the patch palette here. So out of the 512 presets that VSynth is capable of holding in any given project, you can store any 8 of those in this row of 8 buttons over here. And they're organized in lots of banks. So if you hold the bank button down, you'll see that bank 2 is flashing. But you can press to bank 1 and you can store 8 presets into bank 1. And then you can select another bank, bank 2, and you can store another 8 presets. So this totals up to 64 presets here, which you can store out of the 512. This is for instantaneous patch selection in a gig situation, a set. You're playing tunes, you're doing a performance. You want to flash around presets. So here you could have preset number 21, and here you could have 463, for example, and then here you could have preset 89. So there's no problem there. The patch palette is the super fast way to select presets. So we're back onto our normal patch mode window here, and this is really good because you can select patches. I've made this window larger this time. I've remade this video for a couple of reasons. The other video, the keyboard was wobbling around because it was on a slightly unstable stand. But now the video is also, I've got this synth on a much more stable stand, so it's not wobbling. And I've made the screen larger this time so you can see more. So we can select patches using the rotary encoder, of course. Just spin that wheel around. And you can also use the plus and minus increment and decrease buttons there to move patches one at a time. I'm using the plus button here, and I'm just using the minus button here. So that's all good. But the other mode of patch selection, of course, is through the list page, which is here. So we just sort of push this button and we're on the list page now, and this is great. So the 512 sounds are divided into 2 banks here. This bank is 1 to 256, and this 256 to 257 to 512, which is great. It's in 16 groups of 16 down here. You can use the wheel to select these, which is what I'm doing at the moment, or the plus and minus increment and decrease buttons, of course. But you can also just touch these directly by touching the bank, these buttons here. These are the sounds in here, but these buttons on the edges are the bank. So if we wanted to look at this group, which is 257 to 272, that's what we're in now, and we can select any of these sounds. Many of the sounds are linked to the XY pad and the D-beam, of course. So if you wanted to go to sound, say, 61, you'd select this group here because we're in the 1 to 256. Sound 61 is in here, in this group here, between sound number 49 and 64. And then sound number 61 is there, so there it is. If we wanted to go to sound 98 now, we'd simply select the bank here that's got that sound in it. 97 to 1112. and here is sound 98 up there. If we wanted to go to sound 132, we'd be looking into this bank here, which is 129 to 144. Sound 132 is there. If we wanted to jump to sound 365, we would have to select this group here to get us into 257 to 512. 365 is going to be in this group here between 353 and 368. There it is. And there's 365 trance. So there you go. This is the way of moving around through the memories using the list editor, which is really great, or the list page. One thing you should always know is by pressing OK, you will always get back to this page, which has got the synth parameters on it, for example. So if I wanted to go back to sound number 13, for example, I'd go to the list page, I'd select that group, I'd go 1 to 16, and then there's sound 13 there, which is outsider. That sound I used in the intro. If we press OK, we're on the outsider sound patch here. I'm going to move the attack slider on the front panel so I can alter the sound. So at the moment, I'm editing sounds from the front panel, which are changing some of these parameters here. So don't forget you can edit every single patch that you land on as well. I mean, but we're not even going there. We're just selecting patches at the moment. So there's the sound that we've found there. Now, another way to navigate sounds, and this is a terrific way to do it, by the way, is via the category option. So you can search sounds by the type of sounds that they are and what type of things that you're looking for. So we've got the factory presets loaded at the moment, 512 of them. And if I go to the list editor here again, list page, and here's the category tab right here. So we press this, and now we've got a bunch of categories on the outsides here. We've got 15 categories actually, and the 16th one is yours to name and put sounds in there. So you can actually put 256 patches into just your own category alone, which is pretty amazing. So here you can search them by the type of sounds that you might want to look for example. Now, here we've got synth, leads, pads and strings. Sometimes they put two things into the one category, which is fine. Vocals and choirs, piano and keys, bass and guitar, winds, that's on its own. Bells and mallets. Over here, you've got mellow sequences, rhythm sequences, arpeggiators, FX and ambient, which is a very interesting little group there, ethnic and so on. So you can choose. So I'm a bit of a pad strings guy, so I'm going to select that. And now it pulls up all of the pads that are in the factory presets, the 512 sounds. Now, naturally, it's chosen Solar Circle because Solar Circle is a pad. It's a pretty big pad. The next one is this one, for example. I should point out these sounds are not chronological. They just jump into the next. These are just all the pads. So the next pad, for example, might be 19. And then you might jump to 32, and then the next one in line is pad 146. Up here. And then it jumps to 206. and so on. So that's good. So how many pads have you got? Well, you've got multiple groups of 16 usually. If this button is still showing being able to be used as it is, see how this button has got, it's all crossed out. We're looking at the first group of 16 pads now. Press this and we're into the second group, which is terrific. So we've just got more pads to play with. And so on. If you press this button again, we get into a third group of 16 pads, which is just terrific. So we've got even more. And then a fourth group of 16, well, there's not quite 16 pads in this group. As you can see, there's only 15. So that means there's 63 pads available to you from the factory presets, and they're all together here in this one spot, so you can play them all and have fun auditioning them. Of course, the XY pad and the D-beam taking control of these sounds is just fantastic. Now, the thing about these is that some other groups might only have a few things. The ethnic group, for example, only has 6 sounds in it. Now here's an interesting group here, which is very interesting. It's called effects and ambient, and some of these sounds are very pad-like, but they're rather sophisticated sort of soundscapes instead. So here you've got some very interesting sounds as well. You need to experiment. So I'm definitely playing around with XY pad movements and D-beam control there. There's tons of them in here, actually. It just goes on. Some of them are really fantastic. So now that button being greyed out there means there's no more. So we've reached, the limit of those. But you can just try any of these. These are more effects oriented, I guess, but if you go back into here, you'll get these beautiful really fantastic VSynth. This is where VSynth almost excels, And everything affects the sound after touch as well as D-beam and XY pad. You can also plug two continuously controllable expression pedals into the rear of VSynth and manipulate sounds even more so that way. So what I'm going to do now is just load the Motions Volume 1 bank again, just to show that all of these new features that we've just discovered are available there. And of course, that's pretty good. I'm just going to press the mode button and we get to this screen here. We're wanting to go to disk. They call it disk. Load project. If you get to this page, it just means you're on the internal memory. And there's only one memory bank there, and those are the factory sounds as well. But you can press this button down here where it says card, and it just says to wait a minute. It's just reading the contents of the SD card. I'm just going to scroll through now to get Motions Volume 1, and I'm going to engage it. It's saying I'm going to rub out your factory presets and I'm going to pop these in there instead. So I'm going to do that and we'll just pause the video while that's happening. So I've just loaded the Motions Volume 1 bank, and this particular bank, as I've explained before, begins at 385 and goes through to 512. There's only 128 sounds in this particular bank, but I do highly recommend them. It's a magnificent bank and they sound absolutely fabulous. Now, a couple of things to note is that they've sort of put the factory presets back into positions 1 to 384, but they're not really the factory presets. We can go there, for example, by hitting the list editor again, choosing this group, and we're in here. Some of the sounds are actually missing things. The voices are missing from this, for example. And there's another sound here, for example, the Mystic Rap. When you play it, there's no sound. It's all silent. So don't think that your VSynth is crook or wrong or broken or anything like that. It's fine. What they've done is they've just sort of modified those first 384 sounds and those stolen voices and all sorts of raw materials, and they've moved them up into their own bank, which actually starts at 385. And the way to get there is the list editor. Come to this group here, and it's only this group of sounds that we're interested in, because we don't want to hear the first 384, we just want to hear these ones here. And of course you can just sort of select the sounds. You can select them here. And yes, of course, you can select everything by the categories as well. So here we can jump to category, we can go to pads and strings. Now, just to remind you, it will still show all the pads that have come from all 512 sounds, but the first 384 of them are sort of not really required because the factory presets are in those positions. It still thinks that it needs to show those pads. All you've got to do here is just keep selecting this until you get to this window here, where the first pad from the Motions Volume 1 bank is really this one, 385. So there's only one more in that group there. But then when we press this button here, we're into the next group of 16. So because we're going from sound 402 upwards, so all these sounds are now available from the Motions bank. So you can still load a bank like Motions Volume 1, and you can still search all of the various things that come out of that, including various sounds, that you might want to look for. For example, pads. You can still search pads and strings and bells and mallets and ethnic and all sorts of stuff like that simply by using the category tab here. So I hope that's all been helpful, and I'll just take this video out on some interesting sounds from the factory sound bank, once again, FX Ambient, and I'll just play some of those lovely soundscapes there.